So, the Holocaust. That is the first thing people think about when you utter the word genocide. This was the intentional elimination of the Jews from Europe. Now, originally, it did not take the form of a massacre. The Nazis in the 1930s, the National Socialist rulers of Germany, thought of eliminating the Jews from first the German Empire, then ultimately Europe, through emigration, through resettlement elsewhere. And so this had happened quite a few times in Jewish history, that they were collectively forced out. Sometimes they were bought out, like in England in the late Middle Ages, the middle classes, those who were in competition with the Jewish traders, they bought the Jews out. They collected money to pay the Jews to leave. In many other cases, this was not so civilized, and so it is through waves of violence that Jews were forced out. Now, here again, you see, ostensibly the Nazis wanted to follow the example that I just gave from England, where simply the Jews were in a correct, organized manner made to leave. At least that was the first intention. But then you see, as the situation got more critical, as the war started, this became difficult to practice. And gradually, in the years 39 to 41, the elite military organization in Nazi Germany, the SS, started rethinking their plans, and so they came to the idea of eliminating the Jews by killing. So in wartime, during the years 1941-44, there was a organized mass killing that, probably according to available figures, killed some 5.3 million people in three fronts, in three places. One was killings through neck shots on the Eastern Front. So when the German forces were advancing into the Soviet Union, there was an order that any non-military resistance behind the front lines should be dealt with immediately by killing. And then it was added that all Jews should be treated as if they are such armed resistors, whether they are effectively or not. Then they found that this took a heavy toll on the men who had to do it. You see, killing in war, you see, when your own life is at stake, that people can mostly handle. But effectively just going around and, you have people before you kneeling down and then you shoot them. For many people, this is too much. And so they thought, well, we should have a more abstract, more impersonal form of killing. And so this is where the gas chambers came in. A few camps were built in occupied Poland, and like Treblinka, Sobibor, Majdanek. And so there, the Jews from Eastern Europe were herded together and systematically killed, and then the camps were deconstructed, were taken apart to leave no trace of the crime. And then thirdly, you have Auschwitz. Auschwitz was originally not an extermination camp, it was a labor camp in the middle of an industrial area, where many Polish laborers just went to work 9 to 5 and then went home to their families and so on. So you see, that was of course often used as an argument. Here we already sense negationism popping up. to say that, there's nothing special can have happened then, because then everybody would have known. And the idea of the Holocaust was to organize it in secrecy. Why? There had been just before that a campaign to weed out the mentally handicapped. So they thought that the fact that people were fully employed with no other job than to take care of these people who would never produce anything, who would never be any use to society, that this was a terrible waste. So they thought of eliminating all these mentally handicapped. But it was found that the German public opinion didn't want this. So many organizations, including the churches, protested against this, and the regime found the pressure too much. So when they started on their next campaign to eliminate people, namely the Jewish Holocaust, then they decided this has to be in utmost secrecy. So the SS men involved in it were sworn to secrecy. After the war, it was very common for Germans to say, oh, but we didn't know about this. When the Allies were pressing this upon them, this is what you did. They said, but we didn't know about this. And so this is usually a phrase quoted to illustrate hypocrisy. You see, willfully closing your eyes. When, in fact, this is largely true. You see, people were kept in the dark. Like you have the case of the Dutch Jews who organized their own deportation to Auschwitz, thinking this was a labor camp. So the discourse at that time was, you see, Germans, we have to fight, we have to risk our lives on the front line, whereas these Jews are just sitting at home doing nothing and not running any risk. So the Jews thought that maybe we can justify ourselves by contributing to the warfare by labor. And so effectively there was a Jewish council that organized these transports. Why? Well, because they genuinely believed that even though reprehensible, still it was not lethal. They would survive and then come back, restore their prosperity and so on. So Auschwitz is a dubious case. Originally it starts as a labor camp, but then it also becomes part of the elimination machinery. The Holocaust is not the biggest mass killing in history. You see, 5.3 million is very many, yet there have been worse cases, as we shall see. Nevertheless, it was the most intense. There was no escape. In many mass killings in history, you could save yourself by accepting the system of the enemy, by becoming his slave if necessary, or at any rate a subordinate, and so accepting his position in power. Like, for instance, in the case of Hindus falling victim to the Islamic invasions, well, they could always convert. They could betray their own community, walk over to the other side, and then be in the camp of the winners. So in this case, the Jews did not have that option. They were all earmarked for elimination, children included. So that's why this is the genocide par excellence. I'd say that the term Holocaust is now very much identified with this particular genocide. It's not a generic term that you can use anywhere else. Even though the Jews themselves nowadays prefer another term, Shoah, which is Hebrew for destruction.